You are listening to Earshot. Hi, I am Tucker Johnson, composer and host of Earshot. On March 24th, 25th, and 26th, Contemporary Art Music Project held its festival, CAMPGround22. I wanted to dedicate this episode of Earshot to hearing from some of those at the festival, both on the stage and in the audience. So I sat down with composer Bradley Mikesell, saxophonist Doug O'Connor, and my fellow camp podcasters Joshua Mallard and Hitchen, who were in attendance at the festival. This festival was a real treat for Tampa Bay, Florida. It featured performances by an incredible lineup of musicians at the Morian Center for Clay in St. Petersburg, as well as the St. Andrew's Church and Florida Museum of Photographic Arts, both in Tampa. Works were composed by a wonderful collection of composers. It also featured collaborations with the Tampa City Ballet and Central Florida choreographers. Let's hear two quick testimonials from composers John Liberator and Robert McClure, both featured on the festival.
Incredible festival. Every performer, a consummate virtuoso. The venues, outstanding, well attended, and not just by the composers of the festival. Gracious hosts and fantastic composers. I mean, what's not to love? This is what we do. This is what we do it for. You know.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Robert McClure. I teach at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and I was part of this year's Campground Festival. And I have to say, one of the best new music festivals I've ever been to. The level of performance was incredible. The artistry of the composers that were represented at this festival was fantastic. Unico has gathered a group of all-stars for the performers and composers. Fantastic time.
As you can hear from them, it was quite the event. To hear more about the festival, I met with composer Bradley Mikesell, whose piece, A Dream of a Thousand Shades, was performed on the March 26th concert. He shares his experience at the festival and talks a little bit about his piece. We are here sitting down with composer Bradley Mikesell, who was in attendance at CAMPGround22 this year. Bradley is a composer and a student at the Penn State School of Music. I've known him for quite a while, but I want to give him the opportunity to introduce himself. So, hi, Brad. How are you?
Hi, Tucker. Thanks for having me on. As Tucker said, I am currently a master's student at Penn State University in music composition. And like also he said, we've known each other for quite a while. I grew up in St. Petersburg. I did my undergraduate degree with Tucker at the University of South Florida, where then I went to PSU. So I am about to graduate this semester, just in about a month. So currently in the process of everything involved in that process.
Yeah, wonderful. Brad and I both grew up in St. Petersburg, as Brad said. We went to high school together, and
middle school.
In middle school. This festival is, not only, I guess, close to our hearts, but also close to our homes. And so we were really excited about all the stuff that camp was doing in St. Petersburg and in Tampa Bay area in general. Brad, could you show us a little bit about your piece on the festival? I don't have too much time, but I want to go over the piece.
Yeah, definitely. So the piece I had at the festival is called A Dream of a Thousand Shades. I wrote this last year while I was thinking about authenticity and ideas of self-reflection and interpretation. And so I designed the piece around these ideas. And so what essentially it is the performers have to evaluate their emotional state according to a particular model of emotions. It's called the Plethora of Emotions, which is essentially a three-dimensional scale of varying emotional states with different degrees of intensity. So prior to a performance, the performers go through these and assign them to themselves about how they're feeling at that particular time of the performance. So a large part of this piece is for the performers just as much it is for a listener. And so they assign these various states to themselves, write them down on note cards shuffle the note cards at the beginning of the performance between both of the performers. And then as the piece unfolds, they use those note cards as their stylistic indicators to inform how they play. So the notation itself is fairly loose. All that's there really is rhythm and general pitch direction, allowing the performers the freedom to use, their stylistic indicators in the way that works for them. So it's in some ways an exercise in an interpretation of one's own emotional temperaments, or more accurately, how they perceive those to be. So in the performance, Arda and Doug both did an amazing job, and they really both really took it seriously as far as paying attention to how they are reacting to themselves with their note cards, which I really, really appreciated.
Yeah, I really love this idea of a piece that that generates itself, or generates qualities of itself at the very beginning or at the outset of the piece. I think that's like a really fun way to compose and add a lot of variety to the life of a piece of music. Yeah, and I'm really glad that Doug and Arda were able to perform your piece. I'm like, I really wish I could have been there to hear it. I'm looking forward to when the recording is available, if I can catch a listen.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure when they'll have that out, but I'm really looking forward to sharing that because, like I said, they did a really excellent job. And when I was designing the piece, I designed it in a way to where it isn't necessarily intended for live performance. It can certainly be that, right? But it's designed in a way to be either two people or two groups of people interacting with each other and sharing their interpretations of these different temperaments together. So, two people getting together in a practice room and going through the piece is just as, a valid performance of it as a live setting.
So it doesn't necessarily need an audience. It's almost more for the performers themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Their interaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's focused on them.
The great thing about it is that, there can be a performance of the piece that sounds completely different than any other performance, even with the same two performers. And at a live performance, a side effect of it is that it sounds like, it can sound like a good piece of music.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it sounds amazing. I'm especially with Doug and Arda at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of the piece is the performers, right? Like, regarding the aspect of it sounding like a piece of music that can be performed at a concert, that's in a large way mostly onto the performers, right?
I think that's true for any piece of music, like any piece of music ever. And it's wonderful that Contemporary Music Project was able to have such an amazing group of performers for this festival. What was your impression of the whole festival, of the other concerts? Did you get to attend any of the other concerts?
Yeah, no, I went to all the concerts, and the performers, throughout, absolutely outstanding. There's all the guest artists. There was a lot of ballet, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was really excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, on the on the second and third concert, there were ballet performances during one of the pieces, which were really interesting. And I don't know, I'd never seen that at a music festival of this scale, really, which was really nice.
Yeah, I think the choice of venues, as a Tampa Bay resident, were really spot on. The Maureen Center for Clay is like a really beautiful space in St. Petersburg, and it's just really great decision making. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I'm excited to hear your music from the festival, and I'm glad you were able to have such a wonderful experience at CAMPGround22. I hope to have you maybe on the podcast in the future to talk more about your music.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm glad I can talk about this, and really enjoyed the festival overall.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you later.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks again to Bradley for meeting with me and sharing your piece. Up next, I sat down with the amazing saxophonist Doug O'Connor to hear about his experience improvising and performing composed works in Tampa Bay. He shares his thoughts about computers and technology in music, improvisation, the 2 compositions he performed on the festival, as well as the climate of new music in Tampa Bay. We are sitting down with saxophonist Doug O'Connor to talk a little bit more about the contemporary art music project CAMPGround22 festival that happened just this past week. Doug was here playing saxophone for the festival and performed on 2 of the concerts, playing 3 pieces. Doug, could you quickly introduce yourself and talk a little about what you do?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Doug O'Connor. I play the saxophone. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and am pleased to continue performing around the D.C. area as part of the United States Army Band Pershing Zone. Outside of the bands, continuing to pushing my craft, my community forward through new music, through all kinds of music, through embracing electronics and just personal growth. And so with experiences like performing the music of many of the composers I meet at USF and elsewhere, pleased to continue that path.
Yeah, I think we've bumped into each other a number of times, lots of concerts and different, especially through USF as I was a student there. So I think we could start by maybe just talking about some of the pieces that you played. I know that you played 2 composed pieces, one by Rob McClure and one by Bradley Mikesell, but could you talk a little bit about the improvisation with Ben Whiting? I know he was doing some live coding with Super Collider. What was the experience like with that kind of performance?
Sure. Yeah, he brought up the idea about a week before the concert, which I thought was great. And improvisation and jazz and experimental stuff is a big part of just my personal practice, I guess you might say. And so I thought that was really, really cool, especially because I know that when you have an artist at the computer reacting to what you're doing electronically, in a way, my approach was, this is going to be a piece for computer with saxophone accompaniment. You know, I'm going to be supplying like core processing material, but the way things are going to be processed is going to be at least as interesting as what I play.
Yeah, it flips the whole normal sort of conception of a piece with electronics, where it's the electronics are kind of accompanying the kind of Davidovsky approach of electronics accompanying the instrument to an extent or melding with it. In this case, it's sort of like you're supporting what the computer is doing to an extent.
Yeah, and I thought that was really exciting. And I'll say, like, during the pandemic, lots of musicians or instrumentalists, I should say, like myself, got very interested in audio engineering and sound processing. And speaking for my own part, I got very interested in using Ableton Live and sound processing to do exactly that with computers. And I've begun to see microphones and DAWs and the whole ecosystem of electronic processing and sounds as a natural extension of my instrument. So this is just kind of like collaborating with someone who's really expert at that, which was really exciting. What I didn't know was going to happen, which I thought was really, really clever, is there was a projection screen of what Ben was doing at Super Collider during the performance, which added further context so that people could sort of see under the hood a little bit at what was happening.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most actually entertaining things about seeing a sort of live coding session is you get to watch, I guess, what they're typing and see. I've seen Ben do that a number of times, I think once or twice on his own and a couple times with a flute player or with other live coders. But it's really amazing to watch that kind of work.
Just the essence of nerdiness, a live session, man.
Yeah.
You commentate over the top of it.
Yeah, we need the play-by-play.
Oh, he's dropping the double slash. No.
Yeah, exactly. We should ask him to do that next time, or if he needs someone else to do that. So then we can talk a little about Rob McClure's piece, Flora, which I think was a duet, if I remember correctly. If I'm looking over the program.
I mean, any chance I get to perform with Catherine Weintraub is a real treat for me. She's one of the most stupendous, high octane musicians I ever get to play with, and that's saying something, you know, because everyone I work with at the Army Band is super high octane and awesome. But she is something special. So
yeah.
I always have just an explosive fun time putting music together very, very quickly with her. Rob McClure's piece was really, really cool. It's sort of, you know, a lot of saxophone music these days is sort of about an aesthetic of athleticism, right? Pushing the limits is part of the aesthetic of the piece. And that can get a little played out sometimes. And sometimes it's nice to play a piece where special effects and what you might do to push the limits are part of the set of material, but not a requirement, right? Not the exclusive set. They're just doing, so you get this I found Rob's piece to be quite an organic and personal take on, so what it is, the piece is 6 movements representing different flowers or plants. And his take on some of those plants is a little bit surprising. So, which I find a lot of joy and just sort of curiosity in. So for example, there's a movement about these beautiful, bold blue petaled flowers with butterflies that surround them. And, like, how are you going to represent that musically? Well, his choice to do it was to imagine these butterflies moving out of focus in slow motion while the flowers were in perfect focus, almost like a strange sort of futuristic still life, like a hallucinogenic still life.
Yeah.
And so you get, rather than like what might be a little bit more on the nose with like beating wings and fleet, more bold colors and in sonic space, you get a very surprising and different take than you might ordinarily expect. And it creates some mental opposition to expectation, which I find really pleasing.
Yeah, and it sounds like a really, I guess, vivid picture to draw a piece out of. Like, I can already sort of almost imagine what a piece might sound like with that kind of imagery.
Yeah, and he uses the saxophones quite well. So with so it's for alto and tenor saxophone. I was playing the alto part, Catherine was playing the tenor part, and with just big bold slaps and rips and some beautiful like quarter tone melodies, that really burn in just the right way. The end of the second movement in particular is, so there's a suspended note in the tenor that converts to a multiphonic, and then when the multiphonic comes in, the alto moves to a quarter pitch up, and then resolves a quarter pitch up from there. And just, some of the way that harmony works when you're playing with multiphonics and quarter tones has like this strange gravity, where things that when you're playing and practicing by yourself might seem a little bit.
You might not hear that kind of connection.
Yeah, you might think it's like tense, like something that it sort of reverses up and down as far as consonance and dissonance goes. So something that seems dissonant when you're practicing by yourself, once I play my quarter tone in the context of this tenor saxophone multiphonic, that now is the consonant note.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, and and then maybe resolving to a normal pitch has a little bit of burn to it. So some really, really great, interesting writing from Rob there.
And then the other piece that you played was Bradley Mikesell's piece, which I talked to him about a little bit earlier in the episode. He was telling me about the process of sort of going through the cards at the beginning of the piece to sort of evaluate your mental state, or sort of talk about his sort of exploration of authenticity in composing the piece. What was your experience working with that and sort of putting together this duo that kind of generates itself from your input?
Well, first, it's always exciting to get a piece where you realize you can't really rehearse it very much. When I cracked open the score, I was very excited. I thought it was a really novel idea to just explore what it is to be, the emotional state of the performer and what comes across. And one of the things I used to teach, my students, is that the intent of what you do comes across even when you fail to do it. Sometimes, if you have this pinnacle moment, you're reaching for a high note or a zenith, but going for it, those peaks of performance, the audience experiences that sometimes, even if you listen back on the recording and you kind of missed or didn't feel like you got it, the intent comes across quite strongly, which is this sort of magical mystery mirage aspect of live performance. And so to get to explore that in a more explicit way in a piece of music. So I assume you covered in earlier parts of your interview how the piece works.
Yeah, Brad and I talked about it quite a bit.
So I thought that was exciting. When it got down to actually getting ready, the anxiety started building. Like what if this is all just BS? Like I might have fun with it. And Arda, I'm going to try to say his last name. He taught me how to say it. Joao, I think. And he's a fantastic guy, and he's got like a sort of complimentary, zany, fun-loving like personality. So like, I can't believe this guy and I overlapped in school and never got to hang out or something. But he was great. I love getting to meet and work with him. So we had this sort of joyous fun with the piece, but the doubt in my mind always was, well, what's the audience going to feel? Is this just going to seem like kind of silly? And who knows what notes are going to come out, et cetera. But this thought occurred to me later is, so there are moments in the piece where so you draw these cards, and in the moment, reacting to your emotional state in the space, you decide to sort of apply these emotions to what are only contours and rhythms written for the piece. And so any pitch content or effects or dynamics or attitudes are improvised.
Improvise on top of that, yeah.
So sometimes there was like a rhythmic set given by Bradley that, whether or not it went with the cards that I had, there was sort of a naturally implied emotional state, maybe like in the moment, that became true.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to do that, right? It's hard not to do. And so there's this interesting tension of discipline of sticking to the predetermined emotion, but also yielding to your current state and saying, this is like what I feel right now. This is what I'm going to deliver. And it's what was very interesting to me about that is to realize later that this is what we do in performing all live music, is we're improvising all the time according to what the composer has given the performer, and how you react to that and how you want to instigate your collaborator on stage or the audience themselves at the moment. So, with all this like very explicit language and like the piece is composed around that idea, I realized this is just a natural state of composition.
Yeah, something that's really in the rest of music too. It's just really focused on in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So a really, really interesting piece. Like, with something like that, when you perform it, you kind of like, you do it and you hope, you hope that the audience gets something out of it. And if they do, then great. It succeeded,
I know Brad was really, really happy with the performance. He spoke a lot about how really impressed and really happy with it he was. And when he was talking about it, he mentioned too that when he imagined the piece, when he wrote it, it was almost more of something personal for the performers to do. He told me that he'd be really happy with it being done in a practice room with no audience, for a group of performers to do, sort of as an exercise with each other, almost more like practicing. But
because you draw cards that are the other person's emotional state.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an intimacy to it.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And another, I wanted to close by sort of just talking about Contemporary Art Music Project and some of the things we started talking about before we started the interview, but how wonderful it is to have new music in the Tampa Bay area. As someone who's from St. Petersburg, who grew up there, went to high school there, and Bradley Mikesell is a composer as well, also from St. Petersburg. That area has been so important to us, and there's been new music coming and going throughout that area for a long time. But it's really exciting to have something like Contemporary Art Music Project bringing these big, multi-concert projects with bringing amazing performers like yourself into our area to present this kind of music. What is your overall impression, I guess, of the scene in the area, given what Contemporary Art Music Project is doing?
Oh man, I've long been impressed by the vibe and the culture of Tampa as far as like contemporary art and music goes. So becoming friends with Baljinder Sekhan in about 2008 when we were in school, and then he went down to Tampa. I didn't know that much about Tampa at the time, and my sister had just matriculated in school there coincidentally. And so, as I came down to visit more often, I realized, oh my gosh, there's this like contemporary music radio station and all these cats and like the music that Paul Reller writes, whether it's pop Americano or just like way out in space. Pretty dope.
There's a legacy of his festival Bonk from the late 90s and early 2000s that was really big in Tampa as well.
Yeah, and so Tampa's a really interesting area because I feel like so many people come there from other parts of the country, and so you end up with this melting pot in a way of gastronomic culture. I mean, food and drink in Tampa is
yeah.
By the way, Bodega, that was a great recommendation.
Oh yes, yeah, that's an excellent restaurant. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah,
I got the pork plate at Bodega.
Oh, delicious! It's so good. That was so my high school was probably about 10 blocks from that restaurant, so I would always go there after school to grab food.
All right, well, that was my first visit to St. Pete, the town as opposed to the beach, and it was great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of like fantastic energy for contemporary music in Tampa, which I think might seem surprising to many. And I know there's various towns in America, like I think, who was it that was saying there's a prominent hip hop artist that's basically declared Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina as the next Manhattan.
Yeah.
So impractical for musicians to live in and make a living in, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think Tampa might be part of a sort of a groundswell of towns in America that become like these important musical centers. But it's because of individuals like yourself and the culture of people like with Hitchen and Baljinder, of course, and just all the cascading influences and relationships that come from those and art projects like these, that they're able to continue. And as Baljinder said, it's not even so much the festival itself that's exciting, but the downstream secondary, tertiary effects.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I think that's a great way we can close. I mean, just looking forward to not only what Contemporary Art Music Project can do next, but also what can happen in the Tampa Bay area moving forward as far as new music and having people like yourself and other musicians around to play awesome music.
I'm just so glad and honored to be included. So thanks for talking to me, you know?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doug. It was really great to have Doug on to share his experience with CAMPGround22. I also sat down with fellow Contemporary Art Music Project podcasters Joshua Mallard and Han Hitchen. They share their impressions with the festival. So we sat down with composer Bradley Mikesell and saxophonist Doug O'Connor. Now I have with me Joshua Mallard and Han Hitchen, who host a wonderful other podcast on Contemporary Art Music Project. I'm going to ask them in a little bit to talk just a little bit about their shows, and I'm going to recommend that you go listen to it if you haven't. But I have them on because they were in attendance at the concerts and at the festival, and I wanted to hear sort of audience perspective and hear a little bit from my fellow music journalists about their experiences with the concerts and the performances and the dancing. So hi, Josh and Han, how are you both doing?
We're great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really excited to have you guys on the episode. So I just wanted to quickly ask you guys just about your experiences with the performances and with the concerts. If it was there any like big performances that stood out to you that you really enjoyed an extra amount?
Oh yeah, there was so many. That's the thing that was good with the festival is there were so many seriously amazing pieces. There wasn't a single bad one. In particular, I really loved Patrick Chan's piece. It's just like an orchestration masterclass. It was like super intense. And then of course, Bradley's piece was really amazing, super unexpected ending. And I also liked Robert McClure's piece and Stephen Yep.
Yep.
That piece was also amazing. That was a flute duo with ballet performance.
Oh, wow.
There's like a lot of variety, two pieces with dancing also attached to the music. And also the locations were really fun to be at, a good variety.
Growing up in St. Petersburg, I'm really familiar with the Morian Center for Clay. I probably haven't been there since I was in high school, but it's a really wonderful space, and I'm really excited that someone's doing new music there.
Yeah, it was very active, like everything from percussion ensemble stuff with like Hilary Tan's piece, and there's also like really amazing electronic pieces like Nathan Herring's violin and electronics thing was so crazy.
That's one of my favorite pieces in the whole festival.
Amazing.
Y'all are in for a treat.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask about was actually had to do with that variety. I was really impressed by the lineup of performers for this festival. I remember going through the website, for the last few months, looking at what was going on and keeping track with the updates. And the huge lineup of performers is just incredible. Like these performers are people that a lot of them I'm pretty familiar with and have seen perform. And I know how incredibly well they treat the music and how involved they are as performers. I think that's super important to having a really amazing concert series and festival. And it makes me really wish I could have been there to see these performers in action. Were there any like really big standout performances or shows that you really were drawn to?
I think the elephant in the room here might be Doug O'Connor. I mean, his performance is always awesome. There's one piece where he and Ben Whiting actually collaborated on a little super collider improvisation. That was really, really awesome. I mean, Doug was just really, really doing a lot of really, really impressive stuff in that. And just also when he performed Bradley's piece, that was really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky to have Doug on this podcast. I think Doug is a really amazing and just super, I guess, energetic and involved performer. He puts a lot of passion and hard work into what he's doing. And I remember looking through the programs and seeing that improvisation between him and Ben Whiting and feeling really bad that I was missing out on that because I love Ben Whiting's Super Collider work and the live coding improvisation that I've seen him do, and I really would have liked to have been able to see that duo come together, because it's maybe not something I would have immediately thought of in the festival, but I'm so glad that it happened.
The duos are some of the best part. Like Doug and Catherine finally
Mhm.
teamed up on a piece, which is amazing. So two amazing saxophonists on Robert McClure's piece, and then I'm a flutist, so I really loved Stephen Yip's piece, which had Eduardo and is it Elijah
I'm not.
perform,
Alicia?
both flutists,
Mhm.
both really amazing actually. And that piece also had the ballet with it, the dancing with it. So those duos really stand out.
Yeah.
And then also Jamie Jordan had a bunch of wonderful voice performances.
Oh, yes.
Just amazing. Like
Yeah, she's incredible.
it's so like varied, the amount of performances. And then there's like so many others. Like every performance was really amazing in there. Like Sini performed quite a few pieces, and then Carol was on a lot of them. There's also some familiar faces like Kevin Von Campen, which has been in a lot of the camp promo, was all
Mhm.
over the percussion pieces and stuff. And then we also had the McCormick percussion group like
Oh yeah,
really
yeah.
make a big showing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I how close the McCormick Percussion Group is to the three of our hearts, as you former USF students. I think one of the big takeaways is that this was an amazing, first festival from Contemporary Art Music Project. I think it's something that we can really look forward to what Contemporary Art Music Project does in the future, both inside and outside of this festival form. Their concerts moving forward, and this big amazing production that Ben, Unmi, and Alex put together. I think it's really incredible, and they deserve a huge applause for the work that they've done. I'm hugely impressed from everything that I've heard and the people that I've talked to, and I think we have a lot to look forward to from Contemporary Art Music Project.
I agree.
Yeah, without a doubt. And y'all can't see it, but like if I were typing right now, there'd be a lot of clapping emojis everywhere.
Quickly, just before I move on to the music, could you guys really quickly introduce your podcast that just direct people towards what you guys are up to, and share the amazing work that you guys are doing? Because I really love your podcast. I think it's amazingly produced and such wonderful content.
Well, we're glad it's, reaching people. So Lost to Time is essentially a podcast where we try to reach into history and pull out not just composers, but any instrumentalists, musicians, any artists in general whose music has been quote unquote lost to time, who haven't been given like a fair look at, or whose music is very like marginalized or underrated. And these are usually people from marginalized groups as well. So we really try to take in the idea that people who are doing great activity and had great success, or who were doing great activity and didn't have much success in the past, might have been kind of gate-kept by their own, background or beliefs and stuff. So we kind of want to bring that to the forefront, and also tell people how they can start bringing that music to concert spaces today, or just listening to it, things like that.
Yeah, I've really learned about some really amazing music from y'all's show. Like just really amazing stuff, and really in-depth discussion and analysis about the music too. It's not just played. You both talk about it really knowledgeably, and it's really incredible.
Oh yeah, we try to get listeners interested, and then music nerds interested too. But it's great for us because most of the time it's new faces for us too. The idea of it being lost to time, it makes complete sense that these are artists that we don't even know about initially.
Mhm.
And so it really helps us sort of like learn so much more in the process.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you both so much. Have a safe trip back to State College. It's really wonderful to talk to you both, and thank you for coming on. And everyone, go listen to Lost to Time. It's such a wonderful podcast.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to Josh and Han for sitting down to talk about their experience attending CAMPGround22. It's really valuable to have them as my sort of podcast correspondents to talk about the music, the performances, the dance, the electronics, all of the wonderful things that came together for CAMPGround22. And a quick shout out to the directors of camp, Ben Whiting, Unmi Ko, Alex Schanefeld. Their hard work and efforts really paid off with this festival, and I think it was really amazing from everything that I've heard from Doug and Brad and the other composers and Josh and Han. I wanted to close this episode, being that it's been so dense with discussion and talking. It's kind of an information-heavy podcast. I wanted to close out the podcast by playing just two pieces that were performed on the festival. These are not performances from the festival, but they are pieces that were featured. The first I wanted to share was a work for cello and electronics called Singularity by the composer Joao Pedro Oliviera. This piece is pretty fun and really immaculate electronic sounds and blending with the cello. I played a piece of Joao Pedro Oliveira's on a festival just over a year ago called Heavy Metals for Bassoon and Electronics, and I can state to the incredible amount of working together that the acoustic instruments and the electronics do over the course of Joao's pieces. They really fit together really well and are designed in such a way that they complement each other beautifully. So this is Joao Pedro Oliveira's Singularity for cello and electronics, performed by Vid Veljak. Man, isn't that a really impressive showing of electronics prowess as far as organizing the electronic materials and blending them with the cello? It's a really, really fascinating and enjoyable piece. Thank you, Joao, for letting me share that on the podcast. And to close out today's episode, I wanted to share a solo violin piece by Eduardo Costa Roldan. This piece is titled Solos, and it was written for Sini Virtanen, who was performing the piece on CAMPGround22. This performance is the premiere recording, also performed by Sini, and it's a really, really wonderful work for solo violin that explores a wonderful variety of textures and is really beautiful. So I hope you enjoy. That was Eduardo Costa Roldan's solos performed by Sini Virtanen. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earshot. This has been a jam-packed episode with lots of conversations with Doug O'Connor, Bradley Mikesell, Joshua Mallard, and Hitchen. I hope you have gotten excited about the future of Contemporary Art Music Project and about new music in the Tampa Bay area. If you're not in the Tampa Bay area, I hope you may come to visit, maybe to listen to some music, or as Doug said, enjoy the food. Thank you so much for listening.